Hello, welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 256 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 30 of A Feast for Crows. That's Jaime 4.
And as always, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you, unless, of course, you have a Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer tier that includes spoilers, then we will spoil things for you. But regardless, we'll hopefully provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide additional information about the characters and geography of this chapter. How are you, Mackelly?
I'm surviving. I'm doing all right. Weird day. Very weird day.
Well, do tell, because it almost derailed the podcast.
It did. So, the crew that maintains our lawn through the summer, because I'm that fancy.
You are fancy.
I'm definitely not fancy enough to have a crew. They were aerating our lawn today, and in the process, aerating is when they poke a bunch of holes in the soil, to...
I trust that you're describing that for the listeners, because I know.
I figured.
Not an ignoramus.
Just in case anybody didn't know. It's when
I know what other people do to their yards.
Well, in the process of aerating, they seemingly cut the internet line that runs to our house. And that was around midday. And as you know, tomorrow is a big day in our work life.
Work life, yes.
So all of a sudden, Stacy and I are both like, "Uh-oh, we don't have any internet." So I had to ask you to contact a few people that I was in the middle of working with to tell them what happened, and I found myself sitting at the library, working from there.
Oh yeah,
and that was
a good idea.
It was going along well. And Stacy, she left. She was there for a bit, and then she's like, "You know what? I'm just going to do this from my phone hotspot." She had a light day today, so she figured she could make that work. I had a very heavy day. Did not figure I could make that work. So I was sitting there as the hours rolled by, and as you know, my library is right next to both an elementary, middle, and high school. And as I'm working, more and more kids of younger and younger age. I'm sitting at a table like 12 seats, like one of those long tables. And by the end, it was me and a bunch of little kids doing homework. The girl across from me, sitting in the seat on the other side of the table across from me, was literally cutting out half moons from paper.
Oh, that's awesome.
Working. So I was like, oh boy.
That's great.
One of these things does not belong. That was me.
That's a lovely story. I bet you felt very self-conscious.
Just a bit. And then Stacy calls to tell me something toward the end of the time I was there. And I answer it, and I'm talking, and I'm not joking. The young girl to the right of me looks at me like, "Hey, you're supposed to be quiet at the library." I got reprimanded by like a 12-year-old. Just with her eyes. She didn't say anything, but I got the hint.
No, yeah.
So, yeah, that was my day so far. How about you? How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I don't know if you know this, but where we live is closing in on a record amount of rainfall for a calendar year.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
only in September, and we are closing in on a record amount of rainfall.
Yeah, we had a bit of a drought.
We've had a lot the last week
summer.
or so.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we often do, but we've had a lot of rain.
Do you know why we got so much rain this week?
No, I don't.
Because I washed my car. I washed my car
thank you for doing that.
Saturday or Sunday, and it has been raining nonstop, and I refuse to take it out of the driveway. So I've been driving the old van around. So I'm like, out of the garage. So it's in there, still clean. I'm not driving it till it gets sunny again. Anyway, you were saying.
So last Friday, it rained very hard, and I had an 8 a.m. soccer match on a grass field on Saturday.
Uh-oh.
And so I went to the league's website to see what I'm supposed to do about, whether or not I should turn up for this match. And they said, oh, follow us on our social medias. Now, you know me and social media. We're not very close.
No.
So I'm a little bit irked just by the fact that I have to follow the social medias, just
do you even have the capability?
I don't have a Facebook or personal Twitter account, so I literally can't, but you can, these are public things, so you don't have to log in to see them.
Okay.
So, but I'm irked anyway. But anyway, I get up the next morning at like 6 a.m. on a Saturday because I'm checking the socials to see if this game is cancelled. It rained buckets. There's no way this game is going to happen. I check. I leave it till the very last possible second. And then I drive 30 minutes to the other side of town. And I get there and I'm the only car there.
I knew that was coming.
I drive home, and at 8:22, my kickoff time was 8 a.m. At 8:22, they posted on Twitter that the fields were closed for the day.
I remember those days from my kids' youth sports, having to figure that out. Oh, that stinks. I'm sorry to hear that. Sorry that happened to you. That's never fun.
Yeah. But I will tell you, my Saturday got better because I went to a bar with friends who often foster adoptable dogs. And we took a puppy to the bar with us. And this little puppy had a little yellow bandana that said "Adopt Me" on it. Now, Mackelly, I don't know if you know me, but
I do.
I fancy myself quite the ladies' man. That if Carson ever wised up and dumped me, that I'd do all right. I'd be out there. I'd be hamming up this accent.
Yep.
I'd be, and I have no inhibitions about talking to people. I can talk to anyone.
That is true. Yep.
I have discovered that if this was real and I really needed to sort of make lady friends at a bar, all you got to do is take a puppy.
That's the key. You don't need the accent. You don't need any of the stuff. Just a puppy.
It was a little bit like Dawn of the Dead. I mean, they were just sort of shambling towards me, must have puppy. It was really funny. I mean, it was. I had a great time. I was in my element, having a ball. And the puppy is now adopted.
Oh, and there you go, win-win all around.
Exactly. I believe, I don't know for sure it was the lady, but one lady was very, very interested, and I believe it was her. But But yeah, it was like. It's like when you open a tap and too much comes out. It was kind of like that. I was like, "Whoa, this is a little bit scary." If Carson never wises up, I'm going to take a less attractive puppy with me. Right. This one was way too cute.
You got to find the right balance of cuteness there.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes.
So, you don't work in the office like I do, so you don't get to see this, but they've closed some of the buildings where we work, and they've moved people around, and suddenly where I work has become very, very busy. It was moving week, and all of the empty offices around me are suddenly filled, and people are coming in. So it's noisy.
Yeah, like weird. The olden days.
Exactly, it's like the olden days. And I don't know about you, Mackelly, but I like a nice quiet bathroom when I go to the bathroom.
I'm with you. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, you don't want a crowd.
Nope.
I have not been in that bathroom this week without at least 3 other people being in there with me. I'm like, come on, this is crazy. Now, the other part of this story, the sort of continuation of this story, is too puerile and vulgar for our listeners, but I know you'll laugh.
Okay.
So, here we go.
All right, let's hear it.
So I was in there today using the urinal, or urinal.
Yes, okay.
Yeah. And some of the cubicles were occupied. And somebody in one of the cubicles let out a fart that was like a clown. I mean, this thing was like... It was astonishing. I mean, like, it's the kind of fart where afterwards you sort of gasp in disbelief, you know, sort of like, ah! So this noise, I mean, like, it came, it wasn't like sometimes you get like a slow build up. This was like a 0 to 60, and like, it was like,
a Ferrari.
Exactly. And immediately that it finished, his phone went, like, it was responding to the fart.
Even the phone was startled.
like it sent a text or something, you know. I've let your wife know what just happened.
Yeah, I can see why you gave the warning ahead of time.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But I knew you'd like it. Well, let's get down to business. How did we leave Jaime Lannister?
If we have any listeners left.
Yeah. well, it's only the puerile ones. We can be our natural selves from here, Mackelly.
Right.
Last we saw of Jaime, he was leaving King's Landing to break the siege at Riverrun, sort out Harrenhal, and send Willis Manderley home, sparring with Ilyn Payne to increase his skills with his left hand, freeing Harrenhal's prisoners, including the serving girl Pia, putting Sir Bonifer Hasty in charge until Littlefinger's return, and smacking Red Ronnet Connington upsides the head for disrespecting Brienne. Thoroughly deserved. Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one?
Okay. Well, Jaime and company arrive in Derry. Rebuilding and replanting is happening, but the workers retreat within the castle walls when they see armed men. The castle doors are barred. Above the walls flies a quartered Derry Lannister flag. Jaime sees Uncle Kevan's hand there. The locals are Derry proud and will look more kindly on their new Lannister lord, Lancel, if he adopts their ways. The gates are opened, but the bulk of the force must camp beneath the walls, and Jaime orders defenses mounted. He's taking no chances.
Nope. Along with senior lieutenants, Pia rides into the city with the squires. She's used to Harrenhal, so Darry seems like a toy to her. Peck, one of Jaime's squires, teaches her about castles. Jaime is reminded of how young she is. He'd had one of the mountain's men ill-pained for trying to rape her. The man was perplexed since he'd done it 100 times before. Pia was pleased with the gift of his head. Darry had been badly damaged in the fighting, but signs of repair are everywhere.
They're welcomed by a Maester Ottomore. No Kevan, he departed after the wedding. The wedding of Lancel to the widowed Lady Amerei Frey. Her mother is a Derry, which strengthens Lancel's claim. More of Kevan's subtle handiwork. No Lancel either. He's at prayer. But Lady Amerei is preparing a feast. Ottomore shows Jaime to his room, but Jaime knows the castle well. They stayed here when they visited Winterfell in both directions. Turns out he's getting the Lord's rooms. Lancel has been sleeping in the sept.
Jaime thinks that Lancel won't be secure until he's fathered an heir with his half-Darry wife. Lancel has made the once lush apartment Spartan. With help from little Lou, Peck, and Pia, Jaime bathes. The arousal that Pia's presence causes in the hot bath reminds him of bathing with Brienne and his regrettable confessions to her at the time. He dismisses Pia and suggests that Peck sleep with her. She's experienced, probably barren, and he'll learn useful things for his future wedding night. Peck goes beet red. Jaime further exhorts him to treat her kindly. Jaime even suggests that they use his bed while he sups.
At the feast, still no Lancel. He's fasting over the death of the High Septon. Jaime wonders if this excessive piety lies at the heart of the rift with Kevan. Jaime notices that Lady Amerei reminds him of his cousin Cleos. Amerei describes her woes. Husband Pate, killed by the mountain. Father Merritt, killed by outlaws. Jaime recalls Merritt as an oaf and a bully, but raises a cup to his memory. Talks turn to four-legged wolves who are plaguing the region. Jaime asks Amerei's mother, Mariah, who killed Merritt. Her intel points to a one-eyed man, a man in a yellow cloak, but led by a cloaked and hooded woman, whose band fled into the neck.
Beric and Thoros weren't seen. Then, as usual, when his name comes up, people start cataloguing his deaths. Sir Harwin Plum, also known as Hardstone, had promised Amerei Beric's head. Jaime notes a tone of longing there for the plum, not the head.
Good distinction, yeah.
Yes, it's noted that the small folk help the Brotherhood without banners. Lyle Strongbore Craighall calls for their lying tongues. Jaime suggests a gentler approach. Amerei begs Jaime to stay and help with their problems, but his place is with the king. The Strongbore says that he will come back after Riverrun. He doesn't fear Dondarrion, and he'll deal with the Hound too.
Jaime is skeptical that it's the Hound. It sounds more like his brother's work. But his dog helm was seen, so... Jaime thinks Strongbore might want to be careful. He's as big as the Hound, but nowhere near as fast. He takes his leave to talk to Lancel. The door to the sept is guarded by 3 sparrows who refuse to admit Jaime, but Lancel calls from within to let his cousin in. Lancel is very thin. His faith is his nourishment. Jaime tells him to sleep with Amerei before she sleeps with Hardstone. Lancel wishes them both luck. He confesses his 2 crimes, killing Robert and sleeping with Cersei. And betraying Cersei to Tyrion. Worse still, he confessed all of this to the High Septon. He's decided he's going to leave Derry and go to King's Landing to become a warrior's son.
That's news to Jaime that the new High Septon has revived the Faith Militant. Jaime's incredulous that a lion would throw all that he has away for a vow, but Lancel points out that Jaime did exactly the same thing.
Touché.
Yes. He leaves Lancel to his prayers and challenges Lancel to think about how much of his decision is down to wanting to be near Cersei again. Jaime finds Ilyn Payne for more sparring in the Godswood. Jaime unburdens himself to the mute about making love to Cersei while Robert was passed out drunk on the floor of the room that Jaime is now staying in. During sex, Cersei demanded that Arya be maimed or killed for the injury to Joffrey. With hindsight, he's glad that Starkmen found her first. Ilyn Payne laughs. They spar some more.
Okay. Well, there's confessions going all around the place here.
Yeah. I mean, for us, there weren't that many confessions because we knew most of it. No. But Lancel having confessed to other people, that's a problem.
Yes. He's confessing left and right, it seems.
Right. We already knew he slept with Cersei. We didn't know he was telling other people that this had happened. That's pretty bad. We're quickly back to Jaime. Do you notice that we're only 3 chapters between Jaimes here, which is, very rapid for this book?
I did notice that. There were 10 chapters between Jaime 2 and Jaime 3. And now there was only 2 chapters between Jaime 3 and Jaime 4, so it's heating up here.
Yeah, and what's a little bit odd about it is that he's actually covered a lot of ground he covered a lot less ground in this chapter than he did in the previous one. In the previous one, he got all the way from King's Landing to Harrenhal, so that was an enormous distance. But this is less of a... I guess for that reason it makes a bit of sense. But that previous chapter constituted many weeks of travel, I would assume.
Yeah, we watched him leave King's Landing and arrive at Harrenhal, so we were somewhat aware of the time passing.
I definitely think Jaime's right to rue the departure of Kevan. He was the last grown up in the room at Darry, as he was at King's Landing too. So he's kind of like, it seems like Kevan is losing friends the way Cersei is.
Right. Yes. Unfortunately, Kevan's is not so much of his doing.
No.
Cersei's is all of her own doing.
Yes. Although I will say, when you fall out with your son at his wedding, you're partly to blame.
Yeah. Do you recall, was it specifically stated it was right after the wedding, or did he...
I believe that was the implication that was given. I don't know if it was directly stated, but it said that he didn't stay long after the wedding or something like that.
Yeah. And as Lancel says, because they quarreled. And we'll get into what all the things they may or may not have quarreled about. So the first, right away, Jaime notices that positive things are happening at Derry. And at first he starts to attribute it to Lancel, saying, Lancel was putting the castle to right. And then later he thinks about it and thinks to himself, no, he sees his uncle Kevan's fingerprints all over this stuff, including the lion and plowman quartered sigil.
Yep. And yes, I mean, now having met Lancel in the Sept, he's not doing anything to help the citizenry of Derry.
Nothing. Yes, he doesn't care, and he is single-focused on his piety. But, he thinks to himself, after he sees what Kevan's been up to here, the positive things, that Kevan should be Tommen's Hand of the King, and that Cersei is a fool for not making him Hand of the King and making heir Swift the Hand of the King instead. And, well, for one thing, it's an exemplary instance of Cersei's mismanagement not having Kevan on the small council. But she did want him as Hand of the King, and he refused her because he wanted to be King Regent or Castellan of Casterly Rock. And he thinks that Cersei is a fool because Harris Swift is a toad compared to Kevan. But remember, she knows Harris Swift is not all that bright. She doesn't care. Harris Swift is an unknowing hostage because he is Kevan's wife's father. So he's Kevan's father-in-law. So she has him around just so she can control Kevan to some extent. Not because she thinks he's particularly wise or anything of that nature.
Yeah, but I think you're giving her more of a pass than she deserves, though, because as a leader, surrounding yourselves with people who aren't smart enough to give an alternative opinion to your own does not help you as a leader.
Oh, right. Yes. Agreed.
Even if she's got other reasons for choosing them.
Yes. But it's also, it's kind of revealing that Cersei and Jaime do not share much in the way of plans because she clearly hadn't shared the reason why she chose Harris Swift because he's a bit of a hostage. She's not shared that information with him. I mean,
every time we've seen them interact in this book, it has been frosty to the point of angry, so
sure
that does track.
Yeah, you're right. It definitely does. It's just we get an example of it here, that she did not tell him why she did it.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes.
Yeah. I think there's a nice little point that George Martin makes when Pia sees the castle of Derry, which is presumably an ordinary sized castle, nothing particularly special, large or small about it. But given that she grew up in Harrenhal, she can't believe how dinky this place is. But of course, Harrenhal is so gargantuan that everything must look dwarfed by it. But interestingly, we've never been to Casterly Rock. But Jaime mentions Casterly Rock as being the one castle that wouldn't look small to Pia. So it's a much bigger place than I'd given it credit for.
Yeah, I think it's taller than the Wall, possibly. I think it's a pretty big place. So, I mean, it's true.
But just 1 second. It's taller than the Wall because it's a rock, not because it's got 700-foot high walls.
No, right, because it's a big rock. It's like a small mountain, I guess.
Right, small mountain, got it.
Yeah. But yeah, it's true. If you've only ever known Harrenhal, you have no frame of reference. You just think that's how big castles are.
What I like about that, and it's just like a tip of the hat to the writer for noticing one of your characters. She's not a very important character, at least it hasn't been to this point, is coming to a situation where she would be like, wow, look at this. You all seeing what I'm seeing? They made this little toy castle. Why did they do this?
It's a great example of how well George gets into the mind of his characters.
Exactly. And I mean, there's no other reason for bringing it up than just to make us realize, oh yeah, that is what Pia would think, So yes, tip of the hat to George Martin for that one. Jaime and Peck. Peck is Jaime's squire, one of his squires. They kind of remind me a little bit of Tyrion and Pod, just a tiny bit. Uh-huh. And full marks to Jaime. Peck and Pia are kind of like giving doughy eyes at each other. Uh-huh. And his advice to Peck is actually quite nice. It's like, she wants to sleep with you. You might as well sleep with her. And please be nice to her. Which, for Pia, will be a rare and unusual gift because she has been horribly abused for a long time.
Yeah, we're all aware that Jaime's done awful things. And in this chapter, he suggests that he might have done more had he found Arya before Jory Cassell did. We'll discuss that later. But it's refreshing to hear someone say the words, if she's willing, regarding a woman's choice in sexual relations. He tells Peck to be gentle with her, and if she'll have you, not assuming that, that she will, or not giving her a choice. And like you mentioned in the summary, he took a man's head for attempting to rape her, which is, and I wonder if, are we possibly seeing, because of the vulnerability of his lost hand, some empathy for others who are vulnerable? For all of Brienne's size and strength, she's still vulnerable. Her naivety and her unyielding honor make her more vulnerable than most, anyway. And he's taken an affection to her, and like you mentioned, he's kind and decent to Peck and the other squires.
Well, that's something to think about.
I don't know if two-handed Jaime would have such compassion and
it definitely feels like two-handed Jaime might have used those two hands to remove one of Arya's hands had he got hold of her.
Yes. And
I don't think one-handed Jaime would have done. You're right.
At least use one of those hands to push Bran out a window.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Also, interesting insight into Jaime's mind here, that he's sort of admits to himself that he is intentionally dawdling on his way to Riverrun, despite how quickly he got to Harrenhal in the last chapter, because he's hoping that the siege will be over so that he won't have to break his vow to Catelyn to not take up arms against the Tullys anymore. He may not have to. I mean, he might be able to come to a diplomatic solution rather than... Because honestly, I don't see how you win a siege at Riverrun. I mean, it could just go on forever.
Especially of a castle like Riverrun, which is so well protected by the rivers.
Right.
And we're in a rainy season where there's been a ton of rain, so it's not like the rivers are even running low or anything.
Right. So
he tells this Maester Ottomor they were surprised that he stopped at Derry. They weren't expecting it. And he said it was on my way, but it's really not on his way. Derry is northeast of Harrenhal, and Riverrun is a good further distance northwest. So he went in the absolute wrong direction. And like you said, it's because he was hoping to not take up arms against Tully or Stark like he promised Cat.
But I mean, that's not his only reason. I mean, his ostensible reason was to come visit Lancel, which, again, also has a covert reason, which is he was going to do something to Lancel first of all, he was going to find out if it was true about Lancel, and then once he found out, I assume he was going to make Lancel suffer for having slept with Cersei. Yeah, but as it turned out, he couldn't even be bothered with that. He felt I don't think he felt much pity for him, but he just didn't feel anything for him. He was like, what's the point?
Yeah. He thinks to himself that duty awaited him at Riverrun, but a darker need brought him here. So
right.
I think we can infer what that darker need is.
Yeah. They notice armed sparrows within the castle walls, and that was interesting. We know by the end of the chapter that word has reached Darry from King's Landing about the rearming of the Faith Militant, but that's the first indication of it. And Jaime notices it but doesn't think too much of it. I mean, they could all just be sort of like, doing calisthenics with the clubs and sides in their hand. But yes, news has definitely reached the sparrows in the field.
Yes, and we should have known, with Lancel's newfound piety, that he'd be the first to jump in with embracing this. The previous interactions with him have been steadily showing his increased commitment to the faith. First it was just him talking of fondness for the High Septon to Cersei after Tywin's funeral, and then during other conversations, he spoke more and more of the faith, and Jaime noticed that he's always in the company of Septons. So we were seeing how this was progressing, and so I guess it's led to its inevitable conclusion. He is ready and willing to commit fully. And Jaime notices that Lancel and therefore Darry are going to go broke feeding all these sparrows. And maybe we see why now that we get to the end of the chapter. He's not planning on sticking around anyway, so maybe the sparrows will follow him to back to King's Landing.
Yeah.
I would bet that it's one of the topics that Kevan and Lancel quarreled about.
Right.
Feeding all these mouths.
But then, how does the situation change when they get to King's Landing? I mean, it feels like you're kind of going to be in the same boat there. I mean, the faith its ranks seem swelled by this war considerably, and many of its new adherents are the survivors of the war, and some of those are going to be quite violent, broken people.
Yes, definitely.
We've had that. We've talked about that in Brienne chapters. And I just wonder where it all ends, because you're basically getting this sort of migration of people, migration of sparrows, I guess, around the country, and nowhere can feed them in these kinds of numbers, and they themselves are not contributing to the amassing stores for winter, which is extremely important. Mass starvation is looming.
Right. With how much they lost in the Riverlands as far as crops.
Right. So there's more tapestry talk in this chapter, which I first read through these books. I never even noticed the mention of the word tapestry, but now, ever since you called it a tapestry,
right, it's popping up everywhere. Tapestries.
So the walls of the castle are bare, and that maybe makes a bit of sense. It was the castle was sacked in the war, but Jaime recalls that the last time he was here, the walls were bare too, but you could see where the tapestries lived. The walls were darker where the tapestries were. Right. Tyrion then went snooping around the castle and found the tapestries rolled up. And when he unrolled them, they lovingly depicted all the Targaryen kings.
Yeah, from the Conqueror to the Mad King.
Exactly. And this is Castle Darry. And Darry are the exemplar of Targaryen loyalists.
Yes.
And so that's why those tapestries were hidden, because when Jaime and Tyrion visited, it was in the company of one King Robert Baratheon,
right.
No fan of the Targaryens.
Yes, and the Darrys paid heavily. They lost a lot of lands and wealth after Robert won the Robert's Rebellion. And we see, I mean, they even before the war broke out, they still hadn't replaced the old I almost said tapestries, the old tapestries with new ones. They just left up the spots blank, and so it seems like they weren't ready to completely give up on maybe putting those old tapestries back up yet.
Yeah. So I'm just assuming it's these tapestries are on their way to the Eyrie right now. That's my guess.
Maybe. Those are the ones that Littlefinger's talking about.
Exactly. So Red Ronnet Connington has been dispatched to Maidenpool to take Willis Manderley back to White Harbour. It makes sense. I'm pretty sure that their interaction, Jaime and Red Ronnet Connington's interaction at the end of the last chapter, has cemented an enmity between the two of them, which would not easily heal, I feel.
Yes.
Personally, I don't like getting punched in the face, so I would be, if I was Connington, I wouldn't like Jaime anymore. And I particularly wouldn't like getting punched in the face. I wouldn't like, well, I don't know, is it worse to get punched in the face for something you didn't do? Or that you do, or you didn't think was wrong?
Right. Well, ask the guy who lost his head. He didn't think he was doing anything wrong either.
Well, exactly, yeah. Yeah.
He was confused.
I mean, losing your head's pretty bad either way.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, clearly Jaime, at least, is not willing to move past the comments and just chalk them up to, a young guy being a jerk. He was so upset by them, he doesn't even want to see Red Ronnet. Now, he also did need somebody to do the task. So if you're going to pick somebody, pick the guy who just, made you angry, I guess.
Yeah.
Goes to the emotional connection that he has created with Brienne.
Yeah, for sure. And while we're thinking about Brienne, the sort of next scene is the bath scene when when Jaime starts to think. Jaime kind of gets aroused because Pia's helping him get undressed, sort of thing, and then he sends her out. But having a bath, being roused, reminds him of the moment where things took a turn with Brienne when he shared the bath with her in Harrenhal. It's strange though, because what he thinks about that is that he regrets his confessions to her. And this struck me because I was thinking, of all the things that happened with you and Brienne, confessing your innermost secret to her wasn't the worst thing you did, and wasn't the thing. And also, most people's innermost secret is something shameful. But Jaime is the exact opposite. His innermost secret is his free pass for his shameful act,
Right. Yes. It is backward for most people's secret. Yeah.
Exactly. So I know he likes to be sort of taciturn and doesn't want to make excuses for his actions. And I was trying to think about why that is. And partly I think it's because he likes the fear that his reputation shrouds him in. You know what I mean?
Could be.
That because he's the Kingslayer, people sort of like, it's Jaime Lannister.
Right.
Also, there's a bit of being a Lannister. Because as a Lannister lion, you don't care what the sheep think.
True. Yep.
You're a lion. It just doesn't matter to you. He feels no compulsion to make a case to those people. But Brienne was a confidant and a friend. Telling her the truth, especially the nature of this truth, just cements the friendship. It doesn't seem like a reason for shame. And I'm struggling to understand why he feels that, other than the fact that it was his secret and he did let it out of the bag.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. Maybe he is still struggling with the idea of showing vulnerability, and him telling her something that was very private to him, it makes him vulnerable to her, I guess, in her eyes.
I think Simon and Mackelly's PR agency in King's Landing is going to have to spend quite a lot of time breaking down Jaime Lannister to get to the innermost secrets here. Or we could just ask Brienne, I suppose. But we don't know. We wouldn't know that Brienne knows the answer.
Unless we read the book. We could really save a lot of trouble if we read the book.
Yes. So Amerei Frey is daughter to Merritt Frey and Mariah Derry. She's a lesser Frey branch than Cleos, who apparently she resembles. Cleos was the first son of Aemon Frey, who was Walder's second son. Amerei is the eldest child of Merritt, who's the 9th son of Walder. So she's way down the pecking order. I did wonder, actually, if she was actually was she enough of a Darry to get Jaime Lordship of Darry? But then I looked at it, and actually Mariah, her mother, is actually the Lady of Darry. There's so few Darrys left that she's the heir to Darry, basically.
Yeah, she's the oldest living Darry.
Even though a Frey.
Yeah, her brother Ryman did have a son, Lyman, but both Ryman and Mariah's father were killed by the Mountains men at the battle at the Mummers Ford when Beric Dondarrion first died and then was brought back to life. And then it's Raymond. I was saying Ryman. Sorry, I meant to say Raymond. Raymond's son Lyman was killed by the Mountain when he retook Derry.
Okay.
So basically the Mountain has wiped out nearly the entire Derry family.
Yeah.
But to go along with what you're saying about the Frey line, Amerei, she's possibly named after her grandmother Amerei Frey-Darry-Lannister. Their names are almost spelled the same. Amerei is Amerei, and her grandmother was Amarei. So,
okay.
Amerei Frey-Darry-Lannister was Walter's third wife, and also Lyle Frey-Darry-Lannister, Strongbore in this chapter, is a relative. He has the nickname Strongbore because the Frey-Darry-Lannister sigil is a boar. So
right.
And it's actually, everything comes full circle here, because it's funny you just mentioned Cleos Frey. Cleos' wife is actually Mariah's younger sister Jane Derry. So It's all intertwined here.
Oh, did they have children?
They did, but Mariah's the older daughter.
Yeah. I'm just thinking if Lancel puts Amerei aside, I suppose she could remarry, but
yeah,
I just worry about House Derry,
Yeah, they're running low. They're really running low.
So Amerei speaks about losing her first husband prior to Lancel. This guy's name was Pate, and you think that's an unfortunate name in Westeros?
Well, just think about it. We have Pate the Novice from the Feast for Crows prologue. He didn't make it out of the chapter.
Oh, that's right. He got murdered in that chapter, yeah. Okay.
Yes. We had Old Pate, who was the late owner of the kind of destroyed cottage that Arya, Gendry, and Hot Pie were milling about in when they were caught by the Brotherhood Without Banners. So he didn't survive. We have Pate the Whipping Boy of Tommen and Joffrey.
Oh, yes. Aye.
Uh-huh. We have
worst job in A Song of Ice and Fire.
At least when Joffrey was the one who was being whipped for. Then we had Spotted Pate, the legendary Rube of Story, who Pate the Novice hated the association with.
Wow.
And then we have the High Septon that's come up from time to time, the stonemason that was appointed by King Baelor, who couldn't read or write or recite prayers, but King Baelor made him High Septon because he was such a good stonemason. He thought he carved so beautifully, he thought he must be touched by the seven. His name was Pate, and many think that he was poisoned by Baelor's Hand of the King, Prince Viserys. So, Pate's not the most fortunate of names, is what I'm getting at here.
I wonder if he has like sort of like a shorthand. He's like, I need a patsy. Let's call him Pate.
Let's call him Pate. Maybe George knew a boy named Pate when he was young and didn't care for him.
If he was a musician, my God.
But Amerei begins to, tear up and kind of sob when outlaws are mentioned. And her mother, Mariah, says, you have to excuse my daughter. She's still upset about the death of her father at the hand of outlaws. And that's totally legit. That's totally understandable. I feel for the girl. But we were in Merritt's head before he was hanged in that Storm of Swords epilogue.
We were.
He did not have the nicest thoughts on his daughter, Amerei. He considered her a promiscuous burden and was glad to be rid of her until her husband Pate died. And he pretty much had negative thoughts on the whole family. Now, he was dealing with what we thought might have been migraines, but he thought his wife Mariah was a shrew and his children were worthless. Amory's other sister is Fat Walda, who is Roose Bolton's new wife.
Yeah.
And her little brother is none other than Little Walder, the ward of Winterfell. So, as broken up as she is about his death, his last day wasn't spent in fond memory of his family.
honestly, if she died, he probably wouldn't be talking about what a promiscuous mouth to feed she was. He'd probably be saying
true.
all the sweet things she did.
Yes. You are absolutely right.
Amerei has got sort of like, she's batting her eyelids at Sir Harwin Plum, known as the Hardstone. Do you know anything about him?
Yeah, so the Plums are a Westerland house, so they're there probably because through, Kevan and Lancel's association.
Yeah.
We've heard about him before because he and his brothers were part of the group that was sent to find Jaime. And we also have met another Plum, old Brown Ben Plum, in Marine with Danny. And he's the one that told us the story about how he was related to Ossifer Plum, who had a 6-foot manhood. And that story, I think we mentioned in the background, he died during the bedding with his wife, Elena Targaryen, who was actually Baelor the Blessed's sister.
She presumably died too, I would imagine.
Well, some think that he died before they consummated the marriage. And so that's how him fathering his son after death is how he got, was said to have the 6-foot-long manhood. So,
I see.
Yes, the Plums, Harwin, we've met him a little bit, and we know a little bit about the Plums.
Yeah. So Jaime's idea for rooting out Beric, while others are talking about cutting the tongues out of the small folk, it's basically taking a page out of Arthur Dane's book. We've never met Arthur Dane. He was dead before the book started, but he's the Sword of Mourning, who was of the King's Guard when Aerys was king. Arthur Dane defeated the Kingswood Brotherhood, not to be confused with the Brotherhood Without Banners, by listening to the small folk and earning their trust and providing them real help that the Brotherhood couldn't match. Basically listened to their concerns, took them back to Aerys. Aerys implemented the things they were asking for. Everybody was happy, and the Kingswood Brotherhood were rooted out because the small folk turned on them.
Yeah, and Jaime suggests
it's an easy one.
Follow suit. Yeah.
Yes,
it really
exactly,
is. Yeah. Rather than punishing them and going hard on them to get answers, try being nice. Try honey instead of the
That's certainly how the Brotherhood are being successful. They're sharing food. They're trying to help the small folk.
Yeah. Speaking of the Brotherhood Without Banners, when questioned, the villagers tell of outlaws, specifically a one-eyed outlaw, one wearing a yellow cloak, and a woman who they claim is very bedraggled. I don't know I'm not sure what the right word would be, but
I think you're being a little unfair. Wasn't it just cloaked and hooded? Oh no, but they had seen her face as well. They said her face was
being.
Yeah, that's true.
So we're talking. They're referring to Jack B. Lucky, Lem Lemoncloak, and Lady Stoneheart, formerly Catelyn Stark, Tully. But you know who doesn't get mentioned is Beric Dondarrion or Thoros, who were not seen, just Lady Stoneheart. So again, no news on their whereabouts. They also weren't at Oldstone when they hung Merritt, so it's a bit of a mystery. Where have they been, Beric and Thoros?
Yes. I mean, they've always been sort of like backdrop characters, but they have kind of disappeared for a long time now.
Yeah. Not even any rumors of Beric's death, which is the thing that's proliferated so much of our story.
Yeah, it does feel like when last we saw them, he felt he was running out of deaths. So maybe he has. Maybe it's all come to an end,
Could be. Yeah, that very well could be.
Yeah.
We'll have to keep an eye on it. But, so, they mentioned the Mariah tells Jaime that the last they saw of the band that they think killed Merritt, they were disappearing into the neck. And I wondered if Stoneheart, previously Catelyn Stark, is in the neck. I wonder if Howland Reed might take her in and aid her. He was her husband's friend, swears allegiance to Winterfell and the Starks.
But is she herself? That's my question. I mean, if Catelyn Stark wandered into the neck, he absolutely would. But Lady Stoneheart is not the same person, it seems.
Very true. Very true.
We hear more about what the Hound got up to at Salt Pans. It sounds pretty vile and repulsive. And we get the reason why people are pretty sure it's the Hound, that his Hound helmet was seen on the very big guy leading the charge. So that's pretty compelling. But there's a guy in this chapter who's as big as the Hound, and all you'd have to do is put the helmet on him, and he'd look like the Hound.
Yeah, it's not the most...
Only those like Jaime who know how fast the Hound was.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he was wearing a helmet, but someone could have a similar helmet, or could have found or stolen. I mean, last we saw the Hound, he was dying, so it's, it's quite the recovery if he is recovered to the point where he is creating all this havoc.
Right. But it's also a recovery, but also a complete sort of inversion of his character as well.
Yes,
which Jaime points to, that none of what he's hearing from Salt Pans sounds like the Hound. It sounds like the Mountain, which it clearly isn't the Mountain, but if it was anyone, it would be Gregor, not Sandor.
Yes. And, Jaime knows the Hound fairly well, so, makes sense.
Jaime maybe surprises us by staying cool when the Sparrows bar the entrance to the Sept. I wonder if it's staying cool or being outgunned 3-1, they're armed, and he's only got one hand.
Yeah.
I wonder if, like you said, he's learned empathy, and he's also learned discretion since losing a hand.
Yes, that could be it. Yeah, I think two-handed Jaime possibly handles that very differently than one-handed Jaime.
I agree. Now I have no doubt that there would be sparrow pie on that doorstep.
Sparrow pie. Well, but at least one of them, the woman, knew who he was, and yet she stood in there with the other two saying, "No, none shall pass." Which is they don't know that he's not as good with his left as he was with his right. That was a bit of a dangerous move to put up a front like that in front of the Kingslayer. Can I just say, poor Kevan, he's really had a rough go of things in the past, book and a half or so.
You can say it, but you've got to justify it.
Okay. His son Willem died. His brother Tywin died. Lancel nearly died in battle. He's cast out of any role by his niece. And, he's got this one bright spot here. His oldest son is becoming a lord, and a lord of a fairly prominent castle, Castle Derry. And I'm just imagining how it plays out. Lancel goes through the motions of putting the cloak on Amerei and saying the words. And, probably Kevin's watching and thinking, I wish he'd be a little more excited about this, but maybe he's still healing from his wounds. He'll come around. And then you realize he's not even interested in consummating the marriage, doesn't care at all about being a lord. He's become a religious zealot, single-focused, making bad decisions based on visions that he's having in his faith. And it's just got to be even further demoralizing, realizing this isn't going to work out for me either. My son's not even going to do what I thought he was going to do.
Do you... at one point in this chapter, it's mentioned that Lancel might have lost the capacity to father a son because of his injuries. And I wonder if that maybe is underpinning all this, that if he can't do that anymore, maybe that's why he's so sanguine about Amerei and Harwin Plum. He's like, if they can be happy together, great,
Yeah, that makes some sense. It does.
Yeah. All right, so Lancel is terribly annoying. His various confessions, include that he wanted to be Jaime, which is an interesting one because of who he ends up sleeping with. That he plied Robert with the strong wine to Robert's doom, that he slept with Cersei multiple times, that he took measures to prevent issue in that, which is probably a good idea, because if she got pregnant after Robert was dead, it would have looked really suspicious.
Ossifer Plum style.
That he spied on Cersei for Tyrion, but he does say that was under duress from Tyrion. So, and
yep.
perhaps worst of all, I mean, a lot of what I've just said is pretty bad, but he confessed all this to a non-Lannister, the High Septon, who has since died.
Yes.
But he may have kept a diary or something, you know.
Yeah, well, one thing it tells us is that Cersei's fears were well-founded. Her fear was that his newfound piety would cause him to sing some tales, sing some songs that she doesn't want him singing. And we learn he's singing all right.
Oh, yeah.
To just about everyone.
Yep.
And, you know, the last Cersei chapter, we were discussing the idea that she might have been responsible for the High Septon's death based on a few bits of detail that we got in that chapter. You know, the King Baelor's hand could teach Cersei nothing about killing the High Septon, something like that. And she thought that if this new High Septon keeps displeasing her, he's going to end up like the last one. And Jaime, in this chapter, feels pretty confident that Lancel telling the previous High Septon about his sins led to the man's death. So we don't have any concrete evidence of that, but
yeah, and there's only one person who knows those sins well enough to kill a High Septon for them, and that is Cersei Lannister for sure.
Right. Yes. Knowing what, so Lancel confesses. Jaime got what he came for, right? He came to Derry to basically find out whether it's true that Lancel and Cersei were having sexual relations.
I think what he came for was to find out whether Moon Boy has been sleeping with Cersei, and now he absolutely believes it.
So now that he knows that Tyrion was not just trying to hurt him with this accusation, it opens up kind of like what you were just saying. It opens up the possibility of Osmond Kettleblack, and you know, he even, as he's fighting Sir Ilyn, he thinks, you know, maybe you were sleeping with my sister as well. And
he'll never tell.
Right.
He's not like Lancel.
Maybe Cersei should have had Lancel's tongue. That would have shut him up.
But I bet Lancel could write, and that's one thing Ilyn Payne can't do.
Oh, yes. He'd have to take his hands,
he's doubly mute.
Yeah.
I wonder if Ilyn Payne understands the concept of reading and writing. Because Ilyn Payne, if I was Ilyn Payne now, knowing what I now know, I would be like,
yeah.
Teach me how to write. I got something amazing to tell you.
Yeah, well, you know, Jaime's going to here shortly confess to Ilyn all these, you know, that he and Cersei were having sex. You know, he's going to confess that to Ilyn. It wouldn't be that hard to gesture that. You know, you don't need to know how to write in order to get that point across. So, not that he's the most upstanding, most trustworthy person out there, but still.
I'm going to go for there's nobody who he confides in for anything. If he tried to talk to someone, they would just run away. They'd be like, no interest in whatever it is you got to say.
He's too scary. But so, could knowing the truth about Cersei and Lancel, could it possibly calm his obsession with Tyrion's words? He's no longer wondering if it's true. Now he knows that it's true. Could that maybe make it, closure, basically, is what I'm saying.
Tyrion did say, Moon Boy for all I know, right?
Yes.
He undermined that one as he said it.
Yes, you mentioned that at the time, right?
I mean, to a certain extent, it might make you think the only one he knew about was Lancel, because clearly he did know about Lancel because he was blackmailing Lancel over it. So that one he knew about. Everything else was just, I don't know. I see why it might, but I could also see it going in exactly the opposite direction.
Oh, I could too, definitely. Yeah. He does take one final grasp in hopes that she didn't betray him by asking Lancel, did you force her? And he says, no, I loved her. But yeah, again, we see him be less impulsive and not forcefully attack Lancel.
Right. The Sparrows or Lancel, yeah.
Yeah. But of course, he and Cersei are at odds right now, so maybe it made it easier to not get so angry and upset.
Zinger from Lancel when Jaime points out that he's lord of a castle, has lands, people to protect, lady wife. He's a Lannister of the Rock. Why throw all of that away for a vow? You did. Good comeback.
Yeah, it really is. When you spell out what all Jaime gave up for Cersei, Jaime wasn't even giving up being a Lord of Derry. He was giving up being the Lord of Casterly Rock,
right?
Warden of the West,
absolutely. Right, which a castle that would have even impressed Pia.
Right.
And then Jaime also comes up with a very interesting question to Lancel, which is, how much of your desire to go back to King's Landing is to get close to Cersei again? And Lancel doesn't actually answer it. It feels like his piety is real. I mean, Christ, he's starving himself to death.
Yeah.
But why go to King's Landing?
Yeah,
Cersei is attractive.
Yeah, I mean, you could be
he did love her.
A warrior's son in Derry. I don't think you have to go back to King's Landing to be a warrior's son.
100%. Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And you know what? As we're discussing it, I'm realizing that so Lancel thinks that Jaime's upset because Jaime is protective of Cersei, not because Jaime and Cersei were lovers. Because Jaime wonders to himself what Lancel would think if Jaime confessed back to Lancel about his 3 bastard children, which makes me think Jaime believes that Lancel doesn't know this.
But I think Lancel does, because didn't Lancel say Cersei missed Jaime? That's why she was with him. I feel like he recognized the fact he was filling a void left by Jaime.
That is, yes, you're right, because he said, I wanted to be you.
Exactly, yeah.
Because he also, he said I was providing her comfort because of all the things, including Jaime being captive.
Yeah,
but then
so you could take that one of two ways, yeah.
Yes, but though I wanted to be you, takes it in a different direction. Mm-hmm. So, we have conflicting information there.
And Jaime's revelation to Ilyn Payne, which, probably goes to the grave because no one's ever going to talk to Ilyn Payne, is interesting about just how brazen Jaime and Cersei were. I mean, we knew they had the potential to be pretty brazen. They were in Winterfell. Yeah. But it was even more brazen in Derry. I mean, Robert was asleep on the floor and they were making love on the bed.
Yeah. And the thing that struck me most about that story that Jaime tells there is we just see how unhinged and awful Cersei is. She wanted, I think Arya was like 8 at the time, wanted her killed or maimed for the incident with Nymeria the Wolf and Joffrey. Yeah. And one of the scary parts is that Jaime admits he likely would have done it if he had found Arya first. He says to himself, he says to Ilyn, the things I do for love, which is the same thing he said before pushing Bran out of the window. And, Jenny has talked before about how she struggles with Jaime's redemption arc that we've been seeing so far in this book because she has trouble forgiving his horrible past transgressions. And here we have an unfulfilled horrible action because Jory found Arya before Jaime did. Is the only thing that that prevented it from happening.
But you know what? Actually, I'm thinking back on our summary. We sort of said that he was relieved with hindsight that Jory found her first. But I think that was a bit of a stretch of what he said because he didn't really say that. He just said that they did find it. I think maybe now he's relieved, but at the time, I don't think he was. I think he felt he'd let Cersei down by not fulfilling the promise, Right. But at the same time, that really does feel like an arc for Jaime, because Jaime of now would say to her That's crazy. That's
a
the child daughter of the new Hand of the King.
Right.
And you're going to maim her for childish hijinks?
Yes. You're absolutely right. And you know, you wrote the summary this week, and when I read it, I thought, oh, we might have a debate on this, but I think you're on the same page that I am, that he's not... He wasn't thankful at the time, but yes, it does make sense he might be thankful now. Yes.
Right.
And,
yes.
You know, I was started to think about it as this chapter, wound down. Are Jaime and the Hound, were they on a similar journey? You know, both killed and tried to kill children. Micah, you know, the Hound killed Micah in cold blood early in Game of Thrones, and Jaime tried to kill Bran early in Game of Thrones, and you know, now he found out he would have possibly done something terrible to Arya. And now both had found a bit of a moral compass, learned a bit of compassion, developed a bit of a soul. So I feel like there's some similarities there.
Yeah. It's also, it feels like they had the kind of power that wouldn't lend itself to self-reflection and improvement. If anything, it would exacerbate your worst tendencies. Jaime losing his hand might be the exception to that, but both of them were in very privileged positions with very few people calling their sins out. Nobody had the power to do that to either of them. And so typically people don't get better in that situation. People improve when there are people who are morally holding them to a higher standard than they're currently exhibiting. And neither of them had that.
Yeah. And I think, you know, we've discussed this many a time. I think the Hound began to become a better person because of Sansa's influence.
Yeah.
Not because she was holding him to a higher moral standard, but because he was taken by her.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to see harm come to her, and I think that started him developing a bit of a conscience.
Right. Well, excellent. It's time for some spoilers. Join us at the higher tiers of the Buy Me a Coffee Sustainers, and you can get the spoilers. Okay. Exciting. All right. Yes. Thank you for the spoilers, Mackelly. What about some background?
Well, so Lancel says he sleeps at a different altar each night, and that they send him visions. The god that he sleeps under that night sends him visions. Jaime tells Lancel that Baelor the Blessed also had visions, especially when he was fasting. One such vision we know of is the great sept of Baelor on Visenya's hill. It was in a vision that he saw a great sept atop the hill, and he ignored the protests around the city over his outlawing of brothels in King's Landing by putting his focus on building this new sept. Jaime also mentions that the realm would have been better off if Baelor had just closed his eyes and had sex with his sister wife Dana, rather than refusing to consummate the marriage until he became king and then had the marriage dissolved. Likely what he means here is that as Baelor didn't have any heirs, he was succeeded by his uncle Viserys II, and Viserys' oldest son and successor to the Iron Throne was Aegon IV, aka Aegon the Unworthy, very possibly the worst king in the Targaryen line. Now, Viserys II himself was actually not considered very fondly by the people, primarily because many think he poisoned the beloved Baelor, rather than Baelor dying from fasting. However, those who believe in this theory have mixed opinions on the motive. Most think that Viserys just wanted the throne. But there are some who think that he was doing what was best for the realm, since Baelor's last vision was that the Seven wanted him to convert all non-believers throughout the realm. And if he had survived and begun that undertaking, war was the likely outcome, especially with the North and the Iron Islands. And just, I won't say from which couple, but just as a passing note here, Baelor is the grandson of one side of our family feud in House of the Dragon, and his Hand of the King uncle and successor Viserys was actually involved in the Dance of the Dragons.
All right. Yeah.
So there you go.
in comparison with the Game of Thrones television show, nothing really to compare. Jaime goes to River, and this is the same as the last Jaime chapter. We don't see his journey. Lancel does become annoyingly pious, but he does so in King's Landing. He doesn't get married, as far as I remember. Lady Stoneheart was entirely dropped. Talk about a butterfly.
Yeah, right.
So even less reason for this diversion, you know. Pedantry Corner, I didn't see anything here. I mean,
no,
Jaime's arc is an arc for sure, but it has an internal believability to me.
Yeah, I agree. It does.
News and notes, we don't have much today, but our 5-year anniversary is coming up very soon, right?
It is. Yeah. October 7th is our 5-year anniversary. So
wow.
We are quickly approaching, and it is something.
We have no plans.
We don't. We just haven't really had time to plan a big 5-year anniversary event. We probably should have. I wish we would have, but you know,
one of these days
we'll
get around to it.
Yeah. You know, I asked Stacy on our walk this morning. I said, "How many episodes do you think we have recorded? What episode do you think we're recording tonight?" And she guessed 250.
Wow,
that's pretty close.
That is a lady who pays attention.
But she doesn't. That's the thing. It was a blind guess.
Wow, that's incredible. Good for her.
Yeah.
All right, let's conclude this one. So Jaime can't bring himself to get revenge on Lancel. The younger man has basically gone off the deep end, and now, again, it's not pity, it's just he can't be bothered to be angry with him. Or at his sparrows.
Yeah, you know, or he's becoming less impetuous.
Yeah.
You know, as he matures and learns to live the life of someone who doesn't have everything, should I say, at his hand's reach.
Handed to him.
Handed to him, right.
And he's procrastinating to avoid breaking his vow to Cat, which is kind of nice in his own way. He's got a moral code. He's like the Hound in that respect.
Yeah.
It's not many people's moral code, but he has it.
Yeah, and, you know, along those lines, he's also, we've seen him be very kind, both to Pia and Peck and the other squires. And
yeah,
I honestly don't know what type of knight Jaime was to his previous squires when he was the more arrogant, two-handed Jaime Lannister. He could have been really nice to them as well. I don't know that I would bet on that, but, you know, it's something to see how he interacts with them now.
Ironically, he should have been more even-handed with them.
Things might have worked out differently. And you know, Jaime, maybe he's finally seeing Cersei for her true self. He has this line in this chapter. It's something like, "I thought we were the warrior and the maid, but it turns out she's been the stranger, hiding her true face from me." And like we were talking about earlier, when you consider everything that he gave up to be with her, and, you know, when Lancel has this touche moment with him about, well, you gave it all up for a vow, he thinks, I did, but there was more to it than just the vow. The vow was, you know, the honor and the glory of being a member of the Kingsguard had a bit to do with it, but a lot of it was so that he could be with Cersei. And now he's realizing she was not the person that I thought she was.
Yeah. And the Riverlands continue to be plagued or blessed by the Brotherhood without banners, depending on your point of view. But they're certainly plagued, and not in the least bit blessed, by the Hound's slaughter at Salt Pans. Jaime doesn't think it sounds like the Hound, and helmets can be worn by others, and we believe the Hound was dying. So either he's come back as his own version of Lady Stoneheart, or some other big bugger nicked his helmet.
Oh, yeah. I like that first. The second one is the more, you know, mundane of the two options.
Mundane, yes.
Yeah. Yes, but I like him coming back as kind of like a zombie hound. Yeah, that's a fascinating idea.
All right, next time we've got a Brienne chapter, so yet more slogging around in the mud of the Riverlands.
Well, yeah, we're gonna go to a pretty unique place in Westeros, though. So you're gonna want to tune in and find out where we end up this time.
There's 3 ways that you can help us. You could leave us a 5-star rating and possibly a review. You could buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostharrenhal. There you can join us at any of the various sustainer levels. There's a tier to match your interest and budget. And if you join at the higher levels, you get the spoiler section. Or you could just make a donation directly to our cause at our website, ghostsofharrenhal.buzzsprout.com.
And if you're looking for more ways to interact with us, well, one way you can do it now is you can send us a text. The link is at the top of every episode's show notes. Just remember, unfortunately, we can't respond, but we do appreciate and enjoy reading them. And if you're interested in keeping up on the latest Ghosts of Harrenhal news and developments, well, I suggest you check us out on our social media. You can follow us on Twitter at Ghost Harrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and if I'm being honest, if you really want to keep up on the latest with us,
Discord.
Yeah, join our Discord community. That's where we spend the most time. That's where we have a lot of fun. So if you're not already a member, I suggest you become one.
Well, thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.